good evening, everybody. My name is Kerrilynne. To start my speech, I'd like for you to consider 3 questions. The first is, how many films have you seen in a movie theater? Okay. The second is, how many movies or other forms of media have you watched on a digital device? Maybe at home or on the go? Probably a little more, could be different. The third question is, how many plays have you seen performed in a live theater? My guess is that your answer to that question is significantly less than the amount of films you've seen, either in a theater or at home. This assumption is based on a report published by the National Endowment for the Arts in 2014, which brings me to my main claim that the theater industry in the United States is declining in attendance and is becoming less accessible to the majority of the population. To defend this claim, my argument will consist of 3 components, though this is a result of many factors. The first component involves advances in technology and digital media. The second component has to do with economic factors and ticket prices. The third component considers the effects of cuts in art education. Altogether, these factors result in an alienation of patronage to the industry, particularly of wealthy persons. So, getting into the argument. My first claim is that digital entertainment has had adverse effects on attendance at plays and other theater productions. This is evident as mobile media has become more available than ever, causing viewers to be more likely to choose TV or big studio film productions. This is indicated again by the National Endowment for the Arts, or the NEA, in their 2000 report, showing that 167 million adults in 2014 used electronic media, whereas only 139 million adults actually go to the movies, and only 120 million adults attend any live visual or performing arts. This means that there's a disparity of 47 million adults between digital media and theater arts. Furthermore, the streaming of videos in digital media has allowed the majority of individuals to access entertainment from home, making digital media more convenient and affordable, thus more accessible. This leads me to my second claim, that is, economic factors have caused live theater to be less accessible. This is evident as high ticket prices have caused interested patrons to not consider participating in the arts, which is understandable considering that the average ticket prices for plays and musical has risen from about $75 in 2008 to over $100 in 2015, which is published in a report by a statistics portal called Statista. Furthermore, these rising prices discourage attendance, as noted in the Journal of Cultural Economics, which states that economic variables work as deterrents to participation, and the aspects of cultural capital explain the access and intensity of participation. Together, this data indicates that people outside of wealthier classes will have a more difficult time attending or even considering going to a live theater production. Finally, my third point is that cuts in art education have resulted in an unfamiliar youth in the theater and arts entertainment. This is supported by an article published in Variety magazine stating that the past decade's cuts in art education could be having downstream effects on consumers, causing fewer of them to be familiar with the theater and performing arts at a young age. This is further supported by a Wall Street Media published article that estimates in 2008 more than 80% of schools experienced budget cuts And since schools are funded by local residents, already disadvantaged groups have been more disadvantaged by the cuts in education because they have less funding to support their art education. Altogether, these three claims combined result in my main claim. That is that digital entertainment, economic factors, and cuts in art education have had negative effects, causing the theater industry in the United States to decline in attendance and become less accessible to the majority of the population. Thank you.
All right, let me point out some of the things that are pretty solid from the beginning. The proposition's clear. You have an excellent preview. I did have a little bit of a problem with the way the proposition is phrased because it does have two parts to it. We want to avoid that. I think there's a singular way to still express the same idea that you've got there. So the phrasing's a little bit awkward, but it was clearly identified. And like I said, the structure's laid out pretty well. The evidence, I think, is you're very consistent about citing the sources. I appreciated that. I thought that was excellent. And you had good factual data and testimony and some statistical information. I think you could use a couple of examples. First of all, it would make it more interesting if you had some illustrations. And I think it also makes it more tangible for the people who are listening to your argument to kind of see what it is you're talking about. So I think you miss an opportunity to be more influential as a consequence of that. But like I said, generally the evidence was very solid, and I thought you did a good job of citing that information. The one thing that I think is a little bit problematic at the beginning, and it kind of remains so throughout the speech, is this sounds like an explanation for something that's true. I'm not sure if there's a dispute on that. Is there a controversy about what reasons there are for this? You're primarily blaming digital media. I'm not sure if there's any other theory out there behind that explains it. Did I use the example about the African elephant disappearing, in the speech that we had, in my class one time? And she said, the African elephant's disappearing as a result of poaching. And so I'm not sure if your argument fits in this category. In other words, what other explanations have been suggested? Have people suggested that the quality of theater has gone down, that there's a declining interest in it because of a shift in the culture? Is it because people don't relate to that sort of information anymore? You like you said, I think you're trying to cover all of the potential possible reasons for it, but if you do that, then it's just an informative speech, it's not an argument. So what's controversial about that? I do think you need to have a little bit more information that shows that there is in fact a decline in the attendance in those things. I mean, you show that there's a difference between people who see events, like television or use streaming media, and those who go to live events, that sort of thing. But is that difference any different than it was 20 years ago? In other words, you're the one who's made an argument that says it's declining as a result of these kinds of things. So I think you need to document the decline a little bit more also. All right, thank you.